Dude, have you ever stopped to think about how many incredible games were practically destroyed by poorly planned launches? This is just one of the many factors that cause a game to fail commercially. With that in mind, I've put together 15 games that were a total commercial failure, but over time proved to be true works of art, and that honestly completely outclass many modern games being released today.
Dishonored 2? Man, Dishonored 2 is a game that I'll defend until my last breath. It's the definition of an immersive sim masterpiece, but for some reason at launch it just didn't catch fire like the first one did. Maybe it was the technical bugs on PC back then or just bad timing, but it's a crime that more people didn't experience Karnaca. This city isn't just a map, it feels like a living, breathing character. I remember the first time I walked into the Clockwork Mansion, my jaw literally hit the floor. The way the rooms shift and transform in real time while you're trying to outsmart Jindosh, that's some of the most sophisticated level design I've seen in 20 years of gaming. The real beauty here is the choice. You can play as Emily or Corvo, and the way the world reacts to your chaos level is just genius. I personally love going full ghost. No kills, no detections, because it forces you to actually use your brain and explore every vent, balcony, and rooftop. The Stilton's Manor level, where you're jumping between two different time periods, that's peak arcane. It's a game that respects your intelligence, and honestly, seeing these modern linear shooters with no creative freedom just makes me miss this even more. It's a 10 out of 10 that deserved to sell 20 million copies, no joke.
How would I know? I'm practically a shut-in after horror night.
Sunset Overdrive. Okay, let's talk about Sunset Overdrive. This was Insomniac Games before they did Spider-Man, and you can totally see that DNA here. It was an Xbox exclusive at a time when the console was struggling, which basically buried it, but man, this game is a shot of pure adrenaline. It's bright, it's loud, it's punk rock, and it doesn't take itself seriously for even a second. The hook here is the movement. Instead of just running around, you have to grind on rails, bounce off cars, and wall run to keep your style meter up, while blasting mutants with a gun that shoots TNT-strapped teddy bears. I remember the first time the movement clicked for me, I realized I hadn't touched the ground in 10 minutes. It's pure, unadulterated joy. The humor is very meta, constantly breaking the fourth wall and poking fun at gaming tropes, which I found hilarious, though I know some people thought it was a bit much. But compared to the gritty and serious open worlds we get nowadays that feel like a second job, Sunset Overdrive just wants you to have a blast. It's a neon-colored explosion of creativity that was way ahead of its time, and it's a tragedy we never got a sequel.
The Saboteur. If there's one hidden gem that everyone needs to play, it's the Saboteur. This was Pandemic Studios' swan song before EA shut them down, and you can tell they poured their hearts into it. You're Sean Devlin, a hard-drinking Irish race car driver in Nazi-occupied Paris. The visual hook is legendary. The areas under Nazi control are in stark black and white, and as you inspire the resistance and liberate sections of the city, the color slowly bleeds back in. It's such a powerful way to show progress, and it makes every mission feel impactful. The gameplay is like a mix of GTA, Assassin's Creed, and Mercenaries. One minute you're sneaking across rooftops to blow up a fuel depot, and the next you're in a high-speed chase through the streets of Paris. I'll admit, the climbing can be a bit janky and the driving isn't quite Forza level, but the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Walking into a cabaret while jazz plays, smoking a cigarette while you plan your next act of sabotage, it has so much style and soul. Modern open worlds feel so sterile compared to this. It's gritty, it's charmingly rough around the edges, and it's a masterpiece of atmosphere. Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Man, Kingdoms of Amalur has one of the craziest failure stories in history. The studio literally went bankrupt, and the state of Rhode Island got involved. It was a mess. But the game itself, it's a banger. They brought in R.A. Salvatore for the lore and Todd McFarlane for the art, and it shows. It's basically single-player World of Warcraft, but with combat that actually feels good. Seriously, the fate-shifting combat is still some of the most fluid and satisfying action in any RPG. You can swap between magic, daggers, and giant hammers mid-combo, and it feels incredible. The world is massive and colorful, which was a nice change of pace from the everything is brown era of the time. I spent way too many hours just crafting gear and exploring the Feylands. My only real gripe back then was that it could feel a bit MMO-ish with the fetch quests, but the sheer fun of the combat keeps you going. It flopped because it tried to launch near Skyrim and had a bloated budget, but if you want an RPG where the fighting actually feels impactful and the world is bursting with lore, this is the one. It humiliates modern RPGs that have great stories, but combat that feels like you're hitting enemies with wet noodles.
Titanfall 2. I will stand by this until the day I die. Titanfall 2 is the most disrespected masterpiece in the history of first-person shooters. EA basically sent this game out to a slaughterhouse by launching it right between Battlefield and Call of Duty. It was a suicide mission for the sales numbers, but the game itself, it's a 10 out of 10. The movement is like gameplay crack. Once you learn how to wall run and slide hop, every other shooter feels like you're walking through waist-deep mud. And don't even get me started on the campaign. It's short, punchy, and has zero filler. The bond between Jack Cooper and BT-7274 is the heart of the story. I didn't think I'd get emotional over a giant walking tank, but BT's dry, literal humor totally won me over. There's a mission called Effect and Cause. I won't spoil it, but it involves time shifting in a way that is so brilliant, it makes modern, innovative shooters look like they aren't even trying. It's a game that respects your time and your skill. The multiplayer was incredible too, but even just for the 6-hour campaign, it's worth 10 times what you'll pay for it now. It's a perfect game that was buried by corporate incompetence.
Alan Wake. Now, let's talk about a game that felt like playing through a Stephen King novel directed by David Lynch. Alan Wake had a super troubled development. It was supposed to be an open world, then it shifted to linear, and it kind of flopped at launch because people didn't know how to categorize it. But man, the atmosphere of Bright Falls is so thick you can almost smell the pine trees in the damp fog. You play as a writer with writer's block, and the hook is that everything he's writing is actually coming to life and trying to kill him. Using light as a weapon was such a fresh concept. You have to burn away the darkness with your flashlight before you can even land a hit with your revolver. It creates this constant tension where you're frantically looking for a flare or a street lamp to feel safe. I'll admit, Alan runs like he's never seen a treadmill in his life, and the combat can get a bit repetitive near the end, but the story is so compelling that I couldn't stop. It's structured like a TV show, complete with previously on Alan Wake segments. It's got so much soul and mystery, and it makes these modern jump scare horror games feel incredibly cheap.
Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. Enslaved is a game that breaks my heart because it had everything. A script by Alex Garland, the guy who did Ex Machina, a lead performance by Andy Serkis, and a world that was absolutely gorgeous. Instead of the typical gray and brown apocalypse, this world is lush, green, and vibrant because nature has reclaimed the cities. You play as Monkey, a bruiser who is forced to protect a girl named Trip. The chemistry between them is some of the best character writing I've ever experienced in a game. They start off hating each other, and watching that bond grow feels totally earned. The gameplay is a mix of platforming and crunchy staff combat. It's not the most complex system in the world, but every hit feels heavy and meaningful. The real reason this game humiliates modern titles, though, is its heart. It's a focused, emotional journey that doesn't waste your time with 50 hours of mindless fetch quests or open world bloat. It tells a human story in a mechanical world, and the ending is something I still think about years later. It flopped because of a weak marketing campaign and being a new IP, but it is a beautiful, polished adventure that every gamer needs to experience. Prey 2017. Talk about a marketing disaster. Because of the name, everyone expected a sequel to the 2006 Bounty Hunter game, but what Arcane gave us was actually a spiritual successor to System Shock. Prey is a masterpiece of paranoia. I remember waking up in that apartment on Talos 1 and having my mind completely blown by the first big twist. It's a game where a coffee mug on a desk could actually be a mimic waiting to jump on your face. I spent half the game hitting office supplies with a wrench just to feel safe. The freedom here puts modern games to shame. You aren't just following a waypoint, you're using a glue cannon to build your own stairs up a wall, or turning into a roll of duct tape to squeeze through a tiny gap. It respects your intelligence. Every room is a puzzle, and every terminal you read adds a layer to a haunting sci-fi mystery. It flopped because people didn't know what it was, but for those of us who played it, it's one of the smartest, creepiest, and most rewarding experiences in the genre. It's basically BioShock in space, and it deserves way more love than it got.
If Talos 1 had a subconscious, this would be it.
Mad Max. I will never understand how Mad Max didn't become a massive franchise. It had the misfortune of launching on the exact same day as Metal Gear Solid 5, which is basically like opening a local burger joint next to a free steakhouse. But here's the thing, this game is the best car combat experience ever made, period. Building your magnum opus from a scrap heap into a spiked flame-throwing beast of the wasteland is incredibly satisfying. I've spent literal hours just driving into massive sandstorms, watching the lightning strike and the debris fly while I'm trying to harpoon a warboy's car door off. The atmosphere is just dusty, brutal, and beautiful. The hand-to-hand combat has that Arkham-style flow, but it's way more dirty and violent. You can feel the bones breaking. One thing I didn't love was that the on-foot missions could get a bit repetitive, but the second you get back behind the wheel, all is forgiven. It captures the soul of the movies perfectly without being a cheap tie-in. It's a gritty, lonely, and incredibly polished open world that actually feels like a wasteland, not just a map full of icons. It humiliates modern open world games that feel like they were made by a committee. This game has dirt under its fingernails. Sleeping Dogs. I am gonna say it loud for the people in the back. Sleeping Dogs is better than most GTA games. There, I said it. It started as a true crime sequel, got canceled, was rescued by Square Enix, and then it just didn't get the sales it deserved. You play as Wei Shen, an undercover cop infiltrating the triads in Hong Kong. The story is a brutal, emotional journey about loyalty and identity that actually made me care about the protagonist. But the real star is the combat. Instead of just shooting guns, you're using martial arts to take down rooms full of thugs. The environmental takedowns are legendary. Shoving a guy into a phone booth or a meat hook feels visceral in a way modern games are too safe to try. Hong Kong feels so alive. The night markets, the neon lights reflecting in the rain, it has an identity that most digital cities lack. I'll admit that driving physics are a bit arcadey, but it works for high-speed chases through narrow alleys. It's a game with a massive soul, a killer soundtrack, and a world I never wanted to leave. It flopped financially, but in terms of quality, it's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece that puts modern, empty live service cities to absolute shame. Alpha Protocol. This is the definition of a diamond in the rough. Alpha Protocol was a buggy mess at launch, let's be real. It got shredded by critics for its jank.
But if you look past the rough edges, it has the best choice and consequence system I've ever seen. You play as Secret Agent Michael Thornton, and every single thing you say, your tone, your attitude, who you kill, radically changes the story. I remember being shocked that a minor conversation in the first hour could completely change a boss fight 10 hours later. It makes modern branching narratives feel like child's play. The timed dialogue system keeps you on your toes. You don't have 10 minutes to think, you have to react. Do you play it cool like Bond, professional like Bourne, or unhinged like Jack Bauer? The game actually tracks those styles, and NPCs react accordingly. The stealth and shooting are definitely clunky, I won't lie to you, but the RPG depth is light years ahead of its time. It's a spy thriller where you actually feel like you're pulling the strings of a global conspiracy. It's a cult classic for a reason, and if you can handle some 2010-era jank, the complexity of this game will blow your mind compared to today's A to B stories. Alright, hear me out on Evolve. This game was killed by its own marketing in a disastrous DLC strategy before it even had a chance. But the core concept, 4v1 asymmetrical hunting, it was brilliant. I remember the pure adrenaline of being the monster, sneaking through the brush, eating wildlife to evolve, while hearing the hunter's jetpacks closing in. It was a game of high-stakes hide-and-seek that required actual teamwork from the hunters and pure predatory instinct from the monster. When it worked, it was some of the best multiplayer I've ever experienced. The problem was that the learning curve was steep, and if one hunter didn't know what they were doing, the whole match fell apart. But looking at the sea of generic hero shooters and battle royales we have today, Evolve feels like a daring, creative masterpiece that was just handled poorly by the suits in charge. The character designs and the different monster abilities were so unique. It's a tragedy that the servers are gone and the game is basically a ghost now. It proves that a great idea can be buried by bad business, and it totally humiliates the safe multiplayer games that dominate the market today. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Man, talking about Bloodlines is bittersweet. This game was released on the same day as Half-Life 2, which was basically a death sentence. It was a buggy, unfinished mess at launch, but under that broken surface is arguably the best RPG ever written. I'll never forget the first time I walked into a nightclub in Santa Monica as a vampire. The music, the gothic punk vibe, the feeling of being a predator in the shadows, it's intoxicating. Depending on which clan you choose, the entire game changes. If you play as a Malkavian, your character is literally insane and hears voices, and your dialogue options turn into cryptic riddles. The freedom to handle situations is insane. You can be a seductive socialite, a hacking genius, or a combat beast. I remember the Ocean House Hotel mission. It's still one of the scariest things I've ever experienced in a game, and it's not even a horror game. It flopped so hard it killed the studio, but fans have been patching and keeping this game alive for over 20 years because there is simply nothing else like it. It has a darkness and a mature writing style that modern RPGs are way too scared to touch. It's a masterpiece of atmosphere that humiliates anything trying to be edgy today. Next up is Binary Domain, and honestly, it breaks my heart that most people have never even heard of this one. It was made by the Yakuza team, and it's basically Terminator meets iRobot. You're leading a squad through a futuristic Tokyo to hunt down robots that look and act like humans. The hook here is the procedural damage. You don't just shoot till they die. You can shoot the legs off a robot and it'll keep crawling toward you. You can shoot its arm off and it'll switch hands. You can even shoot its head off and it'll start attacking its own team. It's incredibly satisfying. But the real genius is the consequence system. Your squad mates actually pay attention to how you treat them and how you perform in battle. If you're a jerk or you accidentally shoot them, they won't listen to your orders during a boss fight.
I remember shouting voice commands into my headset and actually feeling like a squad leader. The story gets surprisingly deep, asking some really heavy questions about what it means to be alive. It flopped because the marketing was non-existent and it looked like just another shooter, but it has way more heart and creative mechanics than any of the generic military shooters we see nowadays.
Bulletstorm. Finally, we have Bulletstorm, a game that is quite literally a middle finger to every serious shooter out there. It was produced by Epic Games and developed by People Can Fly, and it flopped because it had a really frat boy marketing campaign that people found annoying. But man, the skill shot system is pure genius. You don't just get points for a kill, you get points for how you kill. Kicking an enemy into a giant cactus? That's a prickly pear. Dragging them into a massive man-eating plant with your energy leash? That's feed the beast. It turns every encounter into a creative playground of violence. I spent the whole game trying to find the most ridiculous ways to use the environment. The weapons are insane too, like a gun that shoots drills, or a sniper rifle where you actually guide the bullet in slow-mo. It's loud, it's vulgar, and it's a total blast to play. In a world where shooters are obsessed with realism and tactical reloads, Bulletstorm just wants you to have a ridiculous amount of fun. It totally humiliates the modern trend of boring combat by rewarding you for being as creative and over the top as possible.
And that's the list, everyone. 15 games that market said were failures, but the gamers know are absolute legends. These titles took risks, tried things that hadn't been done before, and showed a level of passion that I honestly think is missing from a lot of today's safe corporate releases. But I want to know your take. Which of these flops do you think is a 10/10 masterpiece? Is there a game that failed commercially that you still play today? Drop a comment below and let's get a conversation going. I read every single one.